Welcome to the Sisters in Crime Writers Podcast. Everyone has a unique writing journey, so join us for conversations about those journeys from the writers themselves. This is Julie Henriques, the Executive Director of Sisters in Crime, and I am delighted to welcome Mary Lee Ashford to the podcast this week. Mary Lee is a lifelong bibliophile, an avid reader and supporter of public libraries. In addition to writing the Sugar and Spice mystery series, she also writes as half of the writing team of Sparkle Abbey. She's the founding president of Sisters in Crime Iowa and a former board member of Mystery Writers of America Midwest. She teaches a university-level class on creativity and loves encouraging other writers as well as connecting with readers. Mary Lee, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I am delighted to be here.
Well, I am going to start this conversation, which is going to, I've already warned you, is going to go in a lot of different directions, but I want to start how I always start. When did you say to yourself, I want to write a novel?
You know, I've thought about the answer to this, and I don't have a good one. I have been a lifelong reader. I grew up in a very small town, a town of 150 people, 149, I guess, since I left, but it was an opportunity in that there wasn't a lot to do. And so every Saturday, my mom took us to the larger town over, and we both got books. She was a mystery reader, and I was just a reader. You know, I sort of progressed through some of the Nancy Drew, Trixie Belden to the Gothic novels and Mary Stewart and Phyllis Whitney. But I read so much, and I'm not sure at what point I went, gosh, I wonder if I could do this. But I think it really started more with, I had a story idea. You know, I'd read enough, but I had a story idea of my own and got interested in, well, what's the process then in putting a story together? So I don't know that there was an actual decision to write a book.
So the story, and I talk about this, and we'll talk about creativity on it today as well. But the story, I think, is like, you know, a gravitational pull, like in a story and then characters and setting and something, and all of a sudden it becomes this thing that feels like it can be a book.
Absolutely.
So once you have that, you've got to figure out craft. So where were you in your life when this story idea came to you?
So I was a young mother, a working mom. And, you know, the books were the escape. Everybody's home, everybody's in bed. Now I get to read. So it sort of came about as a part of that. And then I was working retail at the time, and they had an event with two authors coming to give a talk. It was Sandra Brown and Janet Daly that came.
Oh, wow.
And they talked about, well, if you wanted to do this, you should look into adult ed classes. So I took that route. Met a lovely writer through the class who was a working writer, writing Harlequin novels. And she became a part of my very first critique group. I joined RWA because that seemed the path that both Sandra Brown and Janet Daly and Susan Fox, this now friend, and oh my gosh, that training. There was so much training in that early part of that organization and so much sharing. So any workshop that was offered, I took it.
Yeah.
I then did conferences where, if there was a craft workshop, I was there. And one summer also did the Iowa Summer Writers Workshop at University of Iowa. But that sort of set me on that path of learning what it was all about.
Mm-hmm.
Because you very quickly, when you read a great book and you think, oh, I could do this, you very quickly realize what you don't know.
Yeah. And it's perfect in your head, but then you put it down.
How do you get that?
When it's like, oh, not so perfect. So RWA is an organization that so many people I know joined early on because it had, and Sisters in Crime now has a whole webinar library, but it had those craft classes. But at the same time, it was about getting published. So They didn't neglect that part. And, I would say Sisters in Crime doesn't neglect those two aspects of the business. But just let's keep talking about craft because you've got a family, you've got this idea, you're taking craft classes, it's coming together. You're in RWA, which was Romance Writers of America. When did it move to mysteries for you?
Well, I was at that point working in the public sector. I was the city manager's assistant to the mayor, and I was writing romance, but I kept putting dead bodies in the story. And as a part of Romance Writers of America, they had a subchapter, Kiss of Death, which was more romantic suspense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had started I had started several stories and had started submitting because I'd actually finished a couple of them at this point, but just kept getting rejections. So I sort of started over with this story that started, it was the usual day at City Hall, except for the dead body in the lobby. And it changed from day to day who the dead body was in the beginning. But that story, I submitted to their contest, and it won the Daphne du Maurier Kiss of Death contest, which was one of those. I often talk about writing and publishing as this roller coaster ride, because you get a rejection and you're like, why did I think I could do this? And then you have a contest win like that and you think, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. I'm on the right path. And then there's another twist or turn or loop in that roller coaster. And that story still has never sold.
Interesting. Was it a story or a book? Was it book length or how long was it?
So it was 65,000 words. It was short on the novel side, but within range of being a mystery story. I, at that point, didn't really know cozies, but had moved into a lot of reading cozies, and it was in that range.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little note that I have always kept on my computer since the early days of writing. I wish I knew where the quote came from, and I've searched. It says, "No is not an answer. No is a clue."
Oh.
And for me, that was it with the rejections. The rejections were, okay, what do I need to know? What do I need to work on? What class can I take? Where did I miss this? The clue to making it a saleable book instead of rejections. So I think rejections, part of that is a learning process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I also, and let's put a pin in rejections because that's such an important conversation, but it's also what I'm hearing from you and what I think people can take is that you didn't stop writing and you didn't keep writing that same novel over and over. You said, okay, I'm going to write something else. I'm going to write, because we can take a million craft courses and we all have a shelf full of craft books in our houses, but there's just you can't develop craft unless you keep writing and then write something else, because everything you write will be better.
Right.
Yeah. And I think some people would have just kept working on that same first story, but you didn't. You took the clues of no and kept moving forward.
So the very worst rejection came from a fabulous New York agent. This was an incredible woman and a little scary, but someone that I had an opportunity to meet with at a conference, did the pitch on the City Hall story, which is called Temporarily Dead because it's a temp worker. Did the pitch. She said, send it to me. I sent it to her. She wrote me back and said, your writing is beautiful. I love it. It's still no. Then she called me. I get this call at work. She called me and said, I just wanted to reiterate that there's nothing wrong with this story. It's a great story. Your writing is wonderful, but it's still a no. What else have you got? And I didn't have anything else. I put everything I had into trying to make this the story that used all those things that I'd learned. And oh my gosh, I was dejected. I didn't have a place to go to say, okay, here's what I can do now. However, this led to, and back to my critique group, had a friend in the critique group who was also getting rejections, had some contest wins, but just not quite getting there. And we attended a conference together and had an opportunity to meet with a different, but also brilliant New York agent who said, so tell me about what you're working on. And we both shared the books that we were working on. And she said, oh my gosh, you are writing cozies and you've got to have a hook. And I went, I have a commitment phobic temp worker. Is that not a hook? She's like, no. It has to be a knitting mystery, a crafting of some sort, a baking mystery. And so Anita and I went away and said, we don't have hobbies. We got a margarita, sat down together and went, oh my gosh, what can we do? We are busy working women. We have families. We love our families. We probably can't kill them off in a book, although there are days. We have no hobbies that would fit that. And then we have rescue pets. We both had rescue pets. Mm-hmm. And we loved our rescue pets. And we went, okay, how can we use this? And came up with the idea of a pampered pet mystery story. And Desperate House Dogs was born out of that. And the collaboration of co-writing as Sparkle Abbey was born out of that. Sparkle Abbey was another sort of learning process because we just thought we'd write as, Anita and Mary Lee. The publisher that eventually bought the stories said, no, we've got to have a one author name. It's hard enough for people to remember one author name. So Sparkle was my cat and Abby was her dog. And that's how we came up with the author name. But that was one of those moments where that piece of advice really changed the direction of what we were writing.
Right.
And because we came up with the idea together, we went, oh, we'll write this together.
So I promise listeners we're going to get back to talking about rejections, but I want to talk about co-writing. I hosted a webinar that's in the webinar library of Sisters in Crime with 3 different co-writing partnerships. And there were 3 different conversations about how they did it. I mean, it's like coming up with an idea together, or you having the idea and bringing somebody on, or you having, a Bible that you had done and bringing on a co-writer. I mean, there's a million different ways. I would love to talk to you about how you both co-wrote and continue to, how do you and Anita do this?
So we probably had an advantage in that we didn't know how to do it. And so we just struck out with going forward with our own idea of how to do it. And we wrote every other book. So in the Pampered Pet Mysteries, all of the odd numbered stories I wrote, all of the even numbered stories. So I wrote Desperate House Dogs. She wrote Get Fluffy. I wrote 50 Shades of Greyhound. She wrote The Girl with the Dachshund Tattoo. We wrote every other book, and we had 2 main characters who were cousins who weren't speaking to each other. So same setting, same secondary characters, all of that was shared. But the story that I wrote was told from my character's point of view. And the story that she wrote was told from her character's point of view. So those different voices could work together.
Right.
I think what worked to our advantage was that we both are semi-plotters. I say plotters, but there's also that element of
right.
If something comes along that makes the story better, we're going to go down that path. But because we worked in the same way and knew each other from critiquing each other's work, the writing worked very well because we knew what the other person was trying to accomplish, and we agreed at the beginning. We go with what's best for the book.
And so you're writing book 1. She's probably working on book 2. You're working on the Bible for the series together.
Correct.
Did she read your book, in a draft and give feedback? Like, did you also critique each other's work so that, you could, for so many reasons, but was that part of the partnership?
It was.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. It was ongoing as I'm working on book 1 and she's working on book 2. We're exchanging pages because the stories do have to mesh.
Yes. Yeah.
And so the timeline has to work still, and the introduction of any new characters has to blend. And so we were critiquing at the same time. We did a workshop for a writing conference on collaboration and shared some of the things that we wished we'd known. And as a part of that, we interviewed probably 10 different co-writing teams.
Wow.
And one was Don McBlain and Renee that did the Murder, She Wrote, which they did it entirely differently. I mean, separate rooms, separate roles in the story. And it seemed to me with all of these co-writers that we talked to that it's different for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it evolves as well.
Yes. And you need to, it seems to me, have a working relationship. A friendship would help, but isn't necessary. You need to be able to take criticism from each other, listen and learn, and the story and the series are what really matters.
Right. And that has to be the priority, is the you have to agree that, okay, we're going to work through these things. And I have to say, we never really had any point where we hit something that couldn't be worked through,
And the I'm going to use this word, but the genius of the way you decided to do it is facts are facts, but people's truth is their perception of those facts. So by writing these cousins who don't like each other, you also can see something different in a character. You have a different relationship with people in the community, and that kind of makes it fun for the reader to say, oh, wait, he isn't that good a guy, or, oh, wait,
that
sort of
point
thing.
of view was a really fun part of that I don't think we appreciated going in, but we did as the series went on, because the two characters did have a different view of things, and you could play to those strengths.
Yeah. And I can remember for years seeing you both at Malice in different places, and wearing shirts like just to say we're Sparkle Abbey, but we're two separate people. So were your Sparkle Abbey books the first books published for both of you?
Yes.
And you had how many books all together in the Sparkle Abbey series?
So there are 10 books in that series. And then there's a novella.
That's a great run for a series. And you learn so much writing a cozy series.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
And things that I would think everyone wants a series that runs for 30 books or whatever. You also, the joy of being able to create a new series, having learned from the mistakes of, I rushed this relationship, or I should have way too many characters here, or all those things. You could say, okay, I'm going to do this better the next time. I'm going to create my own world.
Well, and we had both always planned to do something on our own as well, of course, within the constraints of full-time jobs
right.
and families and that sort of thing. And I had always wanted to do a series set in the Midwest. The Sparkle Abbey series was set in Laguna Beach, California, which was a wonderful setting for that type of a series, because there are more registered pets in Laguna Beach than there are children. So it was the perfect setting for that. But I had wanted to do something set in the Midwest. And so when I came up with the idea for a culinary series, a community cookbook series, by this point, we had an agent. And so I pitched that to our agent. She, in turn, took that and ran with it. And that's how Game of Scones was born. So in the crazy up and down roller coaster of publishing, we started with that series just as I got a promotion at work. I ended up being promoted to the deputy CIO. So move from the political end of things to the information technology end of things at the city. And so we're writing the books 9 and 10, I think, in the Pampered Pet series. I'm working on the Game of Scones, the first book of a 3-book contract with Kensington. And then COVID hits. And for a lot of people, that was a space of time. For those of us in technology, that was sheer madness in terms of trying to get 2,000 employees able to work from home. So...
Well, I can't even imagine. So you're writing Game of Scones, you're writing Sparkle Abbey, you're working from home. Todd, let's go back 1 second. When you started the Pampered Pets, Laguna Beach, did she live there, or did you both know it, or was it just, how did you pick that setting?
So I had been with my husband to a conference in Anaheim, and we decided to take a drive down the coast. And I wanted to stop at a coffee shop, which is sort of my MO. If we're traveling, I'm probably going to want to stop at a coffee shop. So we stopped at this coffee shop, lovely little town, and I knew nothing about Laguna Beach, but fell in love with it. It's very European almost. It's this little bubble of art shops and, shops you can take your pets into, and just very laid back. So when we were brainstorming where to do the Pampered Pet series, I said, let's take a look at Laguna Beach. And as it turned out, it was the right place for that type of a series, because that setting gave it so much of a different flavor, I think.
Right, and so rich. And research trips must have been fun.
Exactly.
So when you first pitched this series, you didn't and got a contract for the Pampered Pets. You didn't have an agent?
We did not have an agent at that time. After this conversation with the agent that set us on this idea of co-writing the series, we went away, we worked on it, we bring it to critique. We were just having great fun with this series and with the idea of, working together on it, because it was new and fresh, and it felt like really, I think, for both of us, the first time that we felt, okay, this is a new phase. We've now figured out this is why the rejections, they were very much better rejections, as time goes on, and only another writer understands a good rejection, but they were beginning to be good rejections. So it felt like, aha, we've discovered something new, and we're on the right path here. We were at a different conference and had an opportunity to talk with a publisher there. And she was a small publisher. They were growing. And she said, well, send me what you're comfortable with. So we went back home, worked on it, and got an email from her and said, I think I said, send me what you're comfortable with. So big advice there. If the door opens, walk through it.
Right.
But we've been both from the thinking of it's got to be a finished product. And she's like, no, I want to see what you've got. So I think I had 75 pages done. I think Anita maybe had 50 pages done. And so we just sent it. So I'm in a meeting where I probably should have been paying better attention, but it was a meeting that should have been an email. And I'm looking at my email, and I see an email from this publisher, and it's an offer for 4 books. At about that time, my phone explodes with texts from Anita going, I know you're in a meeting. You're always in a meeting. Get out of that meeting and check your email. And So we went from, oh, this is fun and this is a great idea, to an offer for 4 books. And we got together for lunch, and we talked about, okay, now this has to get serious. Now we have to figure out how to go forward. And I think that we both knew it was the opportunity that we've been hoping for, and that we needed to go forward in all seriousness and get these books done.
And then after that, was there a point during this series that you got, when did the agent come in?
So we were on our way to another conference, and we're on the plane, and we're going to meet with our publisher at the conference. And Anita said, we probably should have ideas for the next books. And I said, well, they'll probably make us write a proposal. And she's like, no, I'm pretty sure if we have titles, we're good. So we came up with The Girl with the Dachshund Tattoo and 50 Shades of Greyhound on the airplane. And at that conference, yes, they were interested in another contract with us. At that conference, there was also the opportunity to talk with some friends that had agents, and we got some recommendations and had a conversation with the agent that we ended up eventually signing with, who was with us then through the rest of the series. And I think, just as much as there was learning on the co-writing, learning about what a collaboration agreement was, learning how a contract would work for 2 people, that sort of thing. On the agent side, there were so many things that we didn't know when we signed that first contract. We knew enough from Sisters in Crime, from organizations that we were a part of, that this needed to be looked at. And so we had an attorney look at the contract, but working with an agent on the subsequent contracts, we learned so much more about the business side.
Yeah, and one piece of advice for folks without an agent who are looking at contracts, a lawyer is super important, or contact the Authors Guild. And if you're a member of the Authors Guild, they will review the contract, because you want to make sure you're not signing your rights away to,
exactly,
to everything, or that, even if it's a wonderful small press and you feel really good about it, just make sure that you're covering yourself, because nobody cares about your career or your books as much as you do.
As much as you. Absolutely.
Yeah. You said something that I think I want to talk about, and that's when opportunity comes to you, walk through the door. And I think for so many creative people, there's such imposter syndrome and such fear of a dream coming true, and then what, right? Or what happens if then I fail, because it's going to break my heart.
So true, because it's a very big part of you that you're putting out there as an artist or as a writer, or in whatever creative field. It's personal.
Yeah.
And so imposter syndrome thrives in that.
And doesn't go away.
It doesn't.
You've written how many books now? It's still, we all have that moment where it's like, okay, this is the one I'm not going to be able to write, or they're going to find out.
They're going to find out I don't know how to do this.
You also talked about rejection. And it's such a part of this business on both the creative side and the business side, as it is with many creative endeavors, and your analogy of a roller coaster is exactly right, because it's not a ladder. Your publishing career is not a ladder. Your writing journey is not a ladder. It is, twists and turns, and you're going upside down, and you feel like throwing up part of the time, and other times you're exhilarated. And that's what it is. It's just, you got to buckle up and be ready for the ride. But
Right.
But good rejections, and again, you said it before, writers understand those two words, are things like, what else have you got? Or, send me what you've got, or, let me do that. Those are incredibly powerful rejections, but no being the clue of, I need to write something else, or I need to figure this out, is how you keep moving forward.
It's how you keep moving forward. But I think for creative folks, you have to develop that elephant skin.
Yeah.
But still, because we use our feelings in our writing, you have to not toughen up too much.
Yeah.
So it's that dichotomy of you've got to be tough, because it's a hard business. And the rejections may come as, no, not this. The rejections, once you're published, may come in terms of not continuing a series.
Right.
The Sugar and Spice series, that contract was for 3 books. At the end of that, the publisher chose not to continue with it. And that feels like a rejection, just as much as, no, not this, earlier in your career. So those can come along at all different points on that roller coaster ride. And you have to be prepared to, okay, how do I go forward from here?
Well, and this is also why having a community of writers is so important, because your family loves you and they're going to be supportive, but your writer friends will let you call and rant and rave, but then they're going to say, what are you doing now?
Mm-hmm.
What's next?
Exactly. Yeah. My husband was like, oh, those idiots, why would they do that? Because he's like, what you do is wonderful. My critique group was, well, you understand that last book came out during COVID and things were crazy, and yours wasn't the only series dropped. And so what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
Next week at Critique, we want to see that. And then also, your writing family will celebrate, commiserate, and nudge.
Right.
So that's so important.
And you're going to celebrate with them, because, publishing is not a zero-sum game. Because somebody got a fabulous contract does not mean there's less for you. Right. You need to be happy for other people, because when it's your time, they'll be happy for you. But being, negative, or that was a terrible book, I don't understand why they got that advance or something, in public, it's like, no. No, be a good citizen. Yeah. Mary Lee, the other part of with cozies is that there's so many factors that are coming in that are impacting cozies. Cozies go through waves of booms, and then something happens and tons of series get canceled, and then they boom again, because people are reading them voraciously. I mean, it's not like there's not a desire to read cozies.
There's a market for
huge
them.
market. But mass market paperbacks are having they're challenging. Bookstores aren't devoting space to them. They're not, because they don't make as much money, and it's just there's so many business aspects that are coming into this that, but the digital world and audiobooks are also booming. So is that the future of, there's so many things to think about. And many authors don't want to think about business. But if that's affecting what you're writing, you gotta say, okay, maybe I'm gonna go digital only. Maybe maybe I need to get an audiobook. Maybe I'm gonna, talk to a different press or something like that.
Well, and I think that's also, that goes back to the being a part of the writing community, being part of an organization, and sharing that information. Because when you hit that turn, or when you hit the end of something and you're not sure what the beginning of something else is gonna look like, all of that information is key to, okay, how am I going to go forward? And it changes, oh my goodness, so fast.
Right.
And the days of, okay, I can take a workshop about this, it's ongoing. I love Sisters in Crime's educational piece because it's up to the minute, because we're talking to each other.
Yes.
We're talking to people in the trenches here.
And we don't talk about money enough. And and I come from a theater background, a theater administration background, but it's the same there. People don't talk about money and how, people will say, oh, well, Mary Lee, you're published now, so you can retire or you can quit your job. It's like, no, I can maybe, do something nice in my kitchen or figure something out, but it's not. There are definitely people, we know people who get to the point where it's life-changing money.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part,
but for most of the working writers, it's not that.
No, it's not, it can't be your sole source of income. Yeah. But there's joy in doing it.
There is. And for me, in sort of this new chapter of my life, I am retired now. So I do have more writing time. My agent retired, so I now do not have an agent. The Sugar and Spice series was picked up by a different publisher, so I do have some publishing contracts. But again, all of that is external.
Mm-hmm.
And internally, you still have to motivate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to, in my case anyway, I have to be in it for the story.
Yeah. And writers don't make it easy on themselves. You could keep doing, figure out a formula and keep doing it, but you also may be at this point thinking, well, maybe I'll try something different. Maybe I'll work on a cozy that's, maybe a little bit edgier or a little bit different, more on the traditional side.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mm-hmm.
lots of opportunities to stretch too, because if you're doing it, it's so much work. You want to do something that gives you pleasure.
Right. You want to spend that time writing a story that is dear to your heart, and hopefully finds a home with readers that enjoy it too. My husband's a marathon runner, and I often think of writing as also that same sort of mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You have to 26 miles. I mean, who does that, right? So to run a marathon, you have to cultivate optimism. You have to believe that, I would be done when it got hot and my feet hurt, I'd be done. And I think writing's like that too. You have to put fuel in your tank. You have to think in terms of, I can do this. And much like marathon running, don't cut your training.
Yes.
You don't just write a book. You have to continue to train. The industry is changing. There are new things to do. Be ready for that next hill, that next dip.
And that's such a brilliant point, because as in marathon running, your husband just doesn't wake up one day and go, oh gosh, I think there's a 26-mile race today. I think I'm going to do it. He spends months
training for that.
Training and doing longer runs and then shorter runs and figuring out fueling and taking care of his knees and doing all that stuff. For writers, it's the same thing. You don't just say, oh, I'm going to write a book. What you're going to do is you're going to write a paragraph.
Right.
And then you're going to write a scene.
So you have to train for it. You have to fuel for it. You have to look at it as, okay, I'm in this for the long haul.
Right. And your first draft is going to be terrible, and that's part of the process, and just give yourself a break. Right?
Well, and you touched on earlier the writing group, your writing friends, and I see that in the running community as well. They're so supportive of each other. If you see somebody that's struggling, and there's encouraging others helps you too.
Yes.
It's all a part of that. What you said earlier with it doesn't diminish what you're doing if someone else has a win. It doesn't mean you don't get a piece of the pie because they had a large piece of the pie. There's enough for everyone, and you have to think of it in terms of, how can I share what I've learned as a part of the process, and others also will share with you what they've learned.
Yeah. No, it's a journey. So as we're wrapping up, tell me where you are now. You've got a new publisher for your culinary cozy, which is a very hot, sector of cozies. People love culinary cozies. Are you working on other projects? Tell me where you are.
So I'm the fourth book in the series just came out. So it's the first new one. I got my rights back to the first three. So they republished the first three, and then just launched Night of the Living Bread, which came out in end of May. And I'm working on the next one in that series, contracted for two more.
Awesome.
With Oliver Heber books. I'm also, though, because I'm retired and decluttering, which is somehow a part of being retired. I think it's my husband and I have both been through things when our mothers passed and I don't want to leave those kinds of things for my kids. But the decluttering process means I've gone through old files, and there are ideas that I didn't pursue. And so I'm looking at some of those ideas that now I might have the time to take one of those and look at something maybe a little bit different than what I'm doing. I think I have a cozy voice. Yeah. I don't think it's ever going to be, although I read across the spectrum on mystery and suspense, I tend to write more towards the traditional or the cozy. Yeah. And so probably never going to be a very dark read.
Right.
But there are some ideas in some of these files that I've pulled out that I'm looking at. Okay, which one should we give it a try?
Oh, that's exciting. That's exciting. And good for you on the decluttering. Your
It's a lengthy process.
your kids will be grateful, though. Mary Lee, thank you for a fabulous conversation.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been great, and it's been a conversation, which is the most wonderful thing about listening to these as a listener, is hearing everybody else's experiences.
Yeah. No, and nobody has the same has the same experience. So that's another thing for people to learn. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'm sure I will see you at one of the conferences.
Absolutely. Thank you for being with us today. Sisters in Crime is about community. We were founded to advocate for women crime writers, and we continue that mission by fighting for equity in the crime writing community. Sisters in Crime is an international, inclusive organization for all who write and love crime fiction, mystery, thrillers, and suspense. Join us at sistersincrime.org and make sure you subscribe to this podcast.